Chapter 3280, Chapter 354, Who is he? Chapter 3280, Chapter 354, Who is he? Chapter 354, Who is he? Is he crazy? When Jun Luosha saw Shi Feng taking the initiative to approach Saint Nine, she couldn't help but try to stop him. Jun Luosha might not have bothered if it were in the past since, back then, she still wasn't aware of how strong Saint Nine was exactly. However, after seeing Saint Nine defeating Favre, a veteran titled expert, in one hit, she'd have to be a fool not to know how frighteningly strong Saint Nine was. At this point, getting killed by Saint Nine could only be considered a small issue. If they ended up earning Saint Nine's ire, they might not even be able to continue surviving in the miniature ancient world. The strength Saint Nine just displayed was already enough to upset the balance between the miniature ancient world's various hegemonic powers. It was especially so now that the world passage was opening soon. The various hegemonic powers would definitely try to befriend Saint Nine as much as possible. So, if they were to offend Saint Nine now, one word from Saint Nine would be more than enough to erase Shi Feng and Wu Xiaoxiao from the miniature ancient world. Even the powers backing them might not be able to continue existing in the miniature ancient world. However, before Jun Luosha could stop Shi Feng, Wu Xiaoxiao suddenly pulled her back and smiled, saying, "Don't worry, senior sister. The guild leader is very strong." When Jun Luosha saw Shi Feng moving closer and closer to Saint Nine, she started to grow even more anxious. Even if Shi Feng was strong, he shouldn't be confronting Saint Nine to prove his strength. Just when Jun Luosha thought of shaking off Wu Xiaoxiao's hand, she suddenly discovered that she, a swordsman, couldn't shake off Wu Xiaoxiao, an elementalist. Moreover, the flow of mana in her body had stagnated, and her body felt incredibly heavy. "Xiaoxiao, you," after taking another look at Wu Xiaoxiao, Jun Luosha couldn't help but feel as if she was looking at a completely different person. How was this supposed to be her cute junior sister? The other party felt more like a legendary monster than a player right now. While Wu Xiaoxiao was holding Jun Luosha back, Shi Feng continued making his way over to Saint Nine. He was aware that Wu Xiaoxiao wasn't misbehaving just because she wanted to protect Jun Luosha. He knew that she was also trying to recruit Jun Luosha. Geniuses nurtured by the Green God Corporation might be affiliated with the corporation, but the corporation did not restrict its talents from joining God's domain's various powers. On the contrary, the corporation strongly encouraged such behavior. This was also why Jun Luosha was not against Franz's attempt at recruiting her. As for Wu Xiaoxiao's unilateral decision to recruit Jun Luosha, Shi Feng wasn't against it. Honestly, even if Wu Xiaoxiao didn't take the initiative to provoke Saint Nine, Shi Feng had planned to intervene in this affair. After all, the Desolate Star Corporation and Zero Wing were partners. Zero Wing had already earned a significant sum of star coins thanks to the Desolate Star Corporation's trade center. So, even if Shi Feng didn't have goodwill toward Franz, he still felt obligated to save Maria's Aunt Favre. On the other side, Franz hurriedly ran over to Favre's side, took out a healing crystal, and shattered it above Favre. Then, streams of light green mist flowed into Favre and quickly healed her back to peak condition. "Do we have any chance of escaping, Auntie?" Franz quietly asked Favre, fear evident in his eyes when he looked at Saint Nine. Saint Nine's strength had completely exceeded Franz's imagination. Although he had long since known that geniuses capable of being regarded as paragons were much stronger than the average titled expert, he didn't think Saint Nine would be strong enough to defeat a veteran titled expert in one move. Even a dozen titled experts working together might not be enough to take down an expert like Saint Nine. However, titled experts were not cabbages that could be found everywhere. They were considered peak combatants even among the various hegemonic powers. In the Desolate Star Corporation's case, despite how much importance the corporation had placed on the miniature ancient world, the corporation could only afford to dispatch 6 titled experts here to get a share of the world passage's opening rewards. If he and his Aunt Favre were to get killed here, it would be even more difficult for the Desolate Star Corporation to get a share of the opening rewards. After all, based on the strength Saint Nine had just shown, he was most likely capable of heavily damaging the souls of those he killed. If that were the case, anyone he killed would be unable to log into God's domain for several days. "It's going to be difficult," Favre said, shaking her head as she eyed Saint Nine warily. He is already strong enough to fight against the god list's top 3. Even if he is fighting someone else, he only needs to spare 2 attacks to eliminate us. That damned Calgaran. He must have made me provoke Saint Nine on purpose just now. Franz mentally cursed as he glared at the middle-aged elementalist a short distance away. The Desolate Star Corporation and the Divine Will Corporation had fiercely competed with each other over the years, so it wasn't out of the question for Calgaran to have planned such a trap. Franz, don't even think of getting away today, Calgaran said, smiling when he saw the strong resentment in Franz's eyes. But don't you worry. Once Lord Saint Nine takes care of that arrogant kid, it'll be your turn next. When Calgaran finished speaking, the spectating crowd on the flying ship couldn't help but sigh. It seems Desolate Stars Group is doomed this time. Franz only has himself to blame for underestimating the experts on the god list. Not to mention, Saint Nine used to be one of the god list's top 5 experts. Even after the various conglomerates' geniuses officially stepped onto the miniature ancient world stage, he still managed to stay within the top 10. Every expert on the current god list is a titled expert. If Saint Nine can rank among the top 10 out of all these titled experts, there's no way the average titled expert can be a match for him. Indeed, Saint Nine used to be among the top 10 paragons of a kingdom in the greater god's domain. The various corporations are willing to pay big money just to befriend such existences. Some corporations will even offer a director's seat to recruit these paragons. That's a privilege no ordinary titled expert can hope to receive. When the various hegemonic powers experts saw how powerless Franz was against Saint Nine, they came to learn just how frightening a paragon could be. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that one paragon was enough to go against an entire hegemonic power. Just as everyone thought Saint Nine would put on another overwhelming performance, Saint Nine, who had been scrutinizing Shifeng all this time, suddenly put his greatsword away. At the same time, his indifferent expression instantly changed into one of respect. Before anyone could react to what was going on, Saint Nine quickly jumped down to the deck and walked up to Shifeng. Then, putting on a friendly smile, he said, "It is a great honor to be able to meet you here, sir. Would you grant me the privilege of buying you a drink upstairs, sir?" Saint Nine's words instantly dumbfounded everyone present. Nobody understood why Saint Nine would suddenly have such a huge change in his attitude and behave so respectfully to the cloaked swordsman approaching him. If they didn't know any better, it looked as if Saint Nine had just met an existence he couldn't afford to provoke. Jun Luoshaw was similarly shocked to see Saint Nine behaving respectfully to Shifeng. After combining this behavior with Wu Xiaoxiao's previous words, she couldn't help but turn to Wu Xiaoxiao and ask, "Xiaoxiao, who is he?" TL notes, 1. Made a change to Chapter 353, Original. Originally, Favre was a widely known paragon during her era. Edited. Originally, Favre was widely known during her era. It was mentioned in Chapter 270 that Favre was a veteran paragon, but I think the author has forgotten about that, and Favre is now only regarded as a veteran titled expert according to this chapter. Thank you for reading on. Me if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3281, Chapter 355, Azura Returns. Chapter 3281, Chapter 355, Azura Returns. Chapter 355, Azura Returns. Jun Luoshaw wasn't the only one wondering about Shifeng's identity after seeing Saint Nine's respectful attitude toward Shifeng. Everyone present was in the same situation. After all, they were talking about the 10th-ranked player on the miniature ancient world's god list here. Saint Nine was a powerhouse whom the miniature ancient world's various hegemonic powers had to think twice about offending. This was true even for the various corporations' successors. One could see this point clearly through Calgaran's attitude. Calgaran was the first successor of the Divine Will Corporation. In addition, he was a titled expert and the commander of the hegemonic power drifters' third trump card legion. Before coming to the miniature ancient world, he was even an expert who had already gotten promoted to Tier 6. He only restarted his progress because of the World Passage's opening rewards. Yet, even a high-status person like Calgaran had chosen to humble himself in front of Saint Nine. Although Saint Nine had never gone beyond Tier 4 in either the miniature ancient world or the greater god's domain, should he join a hegemonic power, he would be given the treatment of a vice guild leader, no questions asked. He would even be given a seat among the hegemonic power's board of directors and made a potential candidate for the guild leader or grand elder position. With Saint Nine's current strength, the only people who could possibly get Saint Nine to behave respectfully to them would be the guild leader of a hegemonic power or the helmsman of a corporation. Everyone else was unworthy of his respect. However, even the various hegemonic powers' vice guild leaders would rarely be willing to enter the miniature ancient world, let alone guild leaders. As for the various corporations' helmsmen, there was no way such big shots would sacrifice their progress and enter the miniature ancient world. So, everyone found it hard to imagine how anyone could get a paragon like Saint Nine to behave so respectfully. Does this person have an incredible origin? Franz's jaw dropped when he saw Saint Nine suddenly taking such a respectful attitude toward Shifeng. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that Saint Nine was strong enough to defy the successor of any corporation in the miniature ancient world. Most of the hegemonic powers in the miniature ancient world wouldn't even dare to make an enemy out of him. Franz had taken a moment to observe Shifeng previously, and the other party could be said to be very normal. He couldn't feel the presence of a powerhouse from Shifeng at all. Not to mention, Shifeng was mingling with Jun Luosha's junior sister. Wu Xiaoxiao might be Jun Luosha's junior sister, but she was nothing more than an internal genius nurtured by the Green God Corporation. She was vastly inferior to Jun Luosha, who had already entered Green God Corporation's core circle. The two couldn't even be compared on the same level. In Franz's opinion, someone considered very strong in Wu Xiaoxiao's mind would, at most, be at the standard of the average fourth-floor expert. This was also usually the limit of experts originating from isolated gods' domains. However, after seeing Saint Nine's respectful attitude, Franz felt that Shifeng might be the son of an upper-ranking hegemonic powers guild leader. Either that or the son of a conglomerate's executive. There might only be a one-rank difference between ordinary hegemonic powers and upper-ranking hegemonic powers in the greater god's domain, but the two were worlds apart from each other in reality. If Shifeng was the son of an upper-ranking hegemonic powers guild leader, even the guild leaders of ordinary hegemonic powers would try to fawn over him, let alone Saint Nine. A world passage's opening was a huge opportunity for most players. So, it wasn't out of the question for the children of an upper-ranking hegemonic powers guild leader or the children of a conglomerate's executive to enter the miniature ancient world. While everyone was secretly speculating on Shifeng's identity, Wu Xiaoxiao smiled at Jun Luosha and said, "Black Flame. He is Zero Wings guild leader Black Flame." The few simple words that came out of Wu Xiaoxiao's mouth instantly shocked and confused Jun Luosha. Black Flame? The god list's 7th-ranked Azura Sword Emperor? How is this possible? Jun Luosha wasn't foreign to the name of Black Flame. After all, Black Flame's name was already known by all in the miniature ancient world at this point. But even if they were talking about Black Flame, Jun Luosha found it hard to believe Saint Nine would take on such a respectful attitude toward the Azura Sword Emperor. It should be known that the God-ranked expert ranking list was the 7 Luminaries Alliance's subjective ranking. It wasn't an actual ranking of combat power. Moreover, even if Black Flame was stronger than Saint Nine, the difference in strength should be very limited. Jun Luosha wasn't the only one confused at this time. Many of the people who had overheard Wu Xiaoxiao's words similarly found this revelation to be puzzling. What a surprise this is. I didn't think that cloaked swordsman would be that rumored Azura Sword Emperor. But this is strange. Even if Saint Nine knows that guy is the Azura Sword Emperor, does Saint Nine need to behave so respectfully? After all, they are paragons of the same caliber. Saint Nine is probably thinking of befriending the Azura Sword Emperor. After all, the world passage will be opening soon. There's no harm in having an extra ally. At this point, the only explanation everyone could think of for Saint Nine to behave so respectfully to Black Flame was because Saint Nine was thinking of joining forces with the Azura Sword Emperor to tackle the world passage's opening. After all, countless experts and powers would gather for the world passage's opening. At that time, even a paragon of Saint Nine's caliber would be limited in what he could accomplish if he were by himself. However, It was a different story if Saint Nine could join forces with Black Flame. Not only was the Azura Sword Emperor one of the Godlist's top 10 experts, but he was also closely affiliated with the Glimmering Sword, another of the top 10 experts on the Godlist. If 3 of the Godlist's top 10 experts worked together, they would become a formidable force even in the World Passage. While everyone was busy speculating Saint Nine's motives, Shifeng looked at Saint Nine and nonchalantly said, "I'll pass on the drink, but it seems you have learned quite the incredible identification skill if you can see through my Black Cloak's effects." Basic identification skills were useless against the Black Cloak's concealment effect. In fact, some advanced identification skills couldn't see through the Black Cloak's effects. It was no exaggeration to say that identification skills capable of seeing through the Black Cloak's effects were incredibly rare. It was for this reason the Black Cloak had become the first choice for experts and dark players wanting to hide their information. "You overpraise me, Mr. Black Flame," Saint Nine said respectfully. "It is only an insignificant skill." "I wouldn't call it an insignificant skill," Shifeng said, smiling as he looked at the divine runes marking Saint Nine's eyes. "The magic eyes of time have the effect of master identification skills. Very few people have them, even among the various hegemonic powers." Saint Nine wasn't surprised that Shifeng had seen through his magic eyes of time. Instead, he started to respect Shifeng even more. Done with the pleasantries, Shifeng got straight to the point and calmly said, "The Tower Alliance is partnered with Zero Wing, so let's end this matter here. If that is what you want, I naturally don't have any problems with it, Mr. Black Flame," Saint Nine said, nodding. He showed no intention of going against Shifeng's decision at all. Meanwhile, Saint Nine's respectful and accommodating behavior caused everyone's jaws to drop. No matter how they looked at it, this wasn't a conversation between equals. The tone Shifeng took didn't sound like he was making a suggestion at all. Instead, it sounded like he was giving a command. Yet, Saint Nine had chosen to follow Shifeng's command without question for some inexplicable reason. For a time, everyone wondered if the Saint Nine they were looking at was even the same person who had just heavily injured the silver-eyed witch Favre in one hit. "Lord Saint Nine?" This is different from what we disc. When Calgaron heard Saint Nine's words, he couldn't help but want to say something about Saint Nine's decision. However, he promptly shut up when he received a glare from Saint Nine. This was because Saint Nine's glare gave him the feeling that should he speak another word, Saint Nine would kill him on the spot. It wasn't until Shifeng left into the distance that Calgaron finally found the courage to speak again. Even so, he still chose to speak in a whisper. "Are we really going to let the desolate Star Corporation go so easily, Lord Saint Nine?" Calgaron was very confused by Saint Nine's behavior. This was the perfect opportunity to deal a heavy blow to the desolate Star Corporation. If they let this opportunity get away, it'd be difficult to find another opportunity like this in the future. "Since Mr. Black Flame has already said so, then this matter will end here," Saint Nine sternly said as he glanced at Calgaron. "If you don't plan on giving up, don't say I didn't warn you if you and your men get annihilated." "I don't understand, Lord Saint Nine. Black Flame might be ranked 7th on the God list, but with your current strength, is there a need for you to humble yourself so much in front of him?" Calgaron asked in confusion. Calgaron had a good understanding of Saint Nine's personality. If given the opportunity, he'd fight the God list's top 3 experts on the spot without hesitation. Respect. That was nothing but a joke. I wouldn't even spare him a second glance if he truly was only 7th on the God list, Saint Nine said as he looked at Calgaron. Then, he turned to look at Shifeng's departing figure and continued respectfully, "But he isn't just the God list's 7th-ranked player. He is also the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon, someone who has won against both Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac." "What? He won against the Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac?" Calgaron gasped when he heard Saint Nine's words, his mind subconsciously thinking that Saint Nine was playing a joke on him. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3282, Chapter 356, The Zero Wing of Today. Chapter 3282, Chapter 356, The Zero Wing of Today. Chapter 356, The Zero Wing of Today. Empress Blood Arrow. undefeated battle maniac. Both were titles known by many in the Greater God's Domain Starlight realm, as the owners of these titles had shaken dozens of kingdoms and multiple empires in the past. Meanwhile, as someone much older than La Roja and Cross, Calgaran had the opportunity to bear witness to the history these two people created. When La Roja and Cross were still actively competing among the Starlight Realm's younger generation, they were known to be invincible among Tier 4 players. They had challenged many paragons across several dozen kingdoms to an official duel, yet not once did they suffer defeat. If they hadn't offended a conglomerate, they would have become even more famous in the Starlight Realm. According to rumors, a conglomerate had extended an olive branch to La Roja and Cross. However, because the conglomerate required them to withdraw from the corporations they were affiliated with, the two eventually chose to give up on joining the conglomerate. Their decision ended up displeasing the conglomerate. As a result, the corporations they belonged to had no choice but to drastically restrict their appearances in public. Otherwise, they would have long since become top celebrities in the Starlight Realm. Although Saint Nine was powerful, he was far from standing on the same level as La Roja and Cross. It was also why Saint Nine dared to challenge the God list's current top 3 players but did not have confidence in securing first place. It was because the player currently occupying the number 1 position on the miniature Ancient Worlds God list was Trekt, an existence known as one of the 3 invincibles alongside La Roja and Cross. So, when Calgaran heard that Black Flame had triumphed over La Roja and Cross, he couldn't help but be dumbfounded. While Calgaran was in shock, Franz similarly revealed a dazed expression on his face. "Is what you just said true, Auntie?" Franz couldn't help but doubt his ears when he heard what his Aunt Favre had just said. "That's Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated battle maniac we are talking about. How can Black Flame possibly win against those 2 legendary individuals? It's not strange for you to be unaware of this matter since you've been focused on the miniature ancient world. The Desolate Star Corporation doesn't have any dealings in the ancient River Kingdom, either," Favre said, nodding in response to her nephew's doubts. Then, she revealed a wry smile as she explained, "According to my sources, Black Flame won the Ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition yesterday and became the kingdom's first paragon. Although Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac had participated in the rookie competition, they concluded the competition in 2nd and 3rd place. At this point, everyone in and around the Ancient River Kingdom already knows about this matter. But what really surprises me is that Black Flame can actually return to the miniature ancient world. Honestly, Favre would have never paid attention to the man named Black Flame if it weren't for her niece Maria. She also wouldn't have bothered to keep an eye on the Ancient River Kingdom's situation. After all, the Starlight Realm was a massive place with over 1,000 kingdoms and thousands of freely accessible gods' domains. Even if she was a 3-star mental strength grandmaster, she couldn't possibly pay attention to all these different worlds 24/7. Meanwhile, Black Flame's return to the miniature ancient world truly surprised her. Even if she ignored Black Flame's achievement of winning against Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac, his ability to freely travel between the Greater God's Domain and miniature ancient world was more than enough for her to label him as incredible. Damn it. Franz couldn't help but have the urge to slap himself when he finished listening to his aunt's explanation. He might not know what had happened in the ancient River Kingdom, but he did know about the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition. To avoid taking up their respective countries' slots, it wouldn't be strange for Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac to participate in the ancient River Kingdom's rookie competition. Meanwhile, paragons such as Empress Blood Arrow and the undefeated Battle Maniac were highly sought after by even the various corporations' helmsmen. Yet, he had expressed disdain to Black Flame just now. This situation couldn't be any worse for him. Different from Franz, Favre felt relieved by Black Flame's achievements. At the same time, she had to admit that her niece had a good eye for people, betting a trade center on Zero Wing early on, instantly allowing her to draw close the distance between her and Black Flame. So long as Maria could receive Black Flame's support, she would have a much greater chance of becoming the Desolate Star Corporation's helmsman. However, the commotion on the flying ship was only a small interlude for everyone's discussions. Shortly after the commotion ended, everyone went back to discussing the Thunder Fortress. Now that the World Passage was about to open, The Sea of Dark Thunder's Thunder Fortress had become the gathering place for many geniuses and powers. Once all of these geniuses and powers arrived, the fortress would definitely become the most spectacular location in the miniature ancient world. At the same time, it would become the place where the various powers decided how they would divide the miniature ancient world's interests in the future. Sea of Dark Thunder, Thunder Fortress. The Thunder Fortress was a steel behemoth situated in the middle of a pitch-black sea. At this time, ships of incredible value could be seen docking inside the spacious fortress one after another, their numbers easily exceeding 5,000. This number normally couldn't be seen in any naval city. However, despite how many ships were docking inside the fortress's inner port did not seem crowded. While watching these ships dock inside the Thunder Fortress, the many native geniuses resting at the port engaged in discussion with each other. Why have the 7 great powers gathered us native geniuses and experts here? A young man who was a level 132, Tier 4 ranger asked, the youth sipping on a glass of cheap fruit wine as he curiously looked at the 7 great native powers ships docked nearby. Isn't it obvious that they're trying to recruit us? I heard that players would need to be at Tier 4 at the very least to enter the World Passage. Meanwhile, the 7 powers will not only need ships to trade with the greater god's domain, but also a large number of experts to escort their ships, a level 132, Tier 4 elementalist said. The trading of resources between the miniature ancient world and the greater god's domain is a big business. The 7 powers can earn a ton of the greater world star coins if handled properly. However, compared to foreign players who are familiar with the greater god's domain, it'll be much easier for the 7 powers to control us native players. The saddest part is that we don't have a choice, a level 133, Tier 4 berserker said, sighing. Unless you're one of those so-called paragons, none of the various foreign powers will bat a second eye at you. The only thing native experts like us can do is join a relatively strong native power if we want to have an easier time surviving in the greater god's domain. Indeed. The level 132 elementalist nodded in agreement. But out of the 7 powers, which one should we join? Maybe Zero Wing? Aside from the 5 great super guilds, the remaining 2 options are the Flower of 7 Sins and Zero Wing. Among them, Zero Wing's rise is the quickest. Zero Wing's guild leader Black Flame is even 7th on the god list. Zero Wing? The level 133 berserker shook his head when he heard the elementalist's suggestion. Zero Wing's rise might be the quickest, but its foundation is far too lacking compared to the other 6 powers. You can see this just by looking at each power's fleet. The fleets of the 5 great super guilds and the Flower of 7 Sins are led by 2 or more warships. Each fleet also has more than 10 bronze speedboats. In comparison, Zero Wing's fleet only has 3 bronze speedboats and a bunch of advanced speedboats. It doesn't even have 1 warship. In addition, that person from the Thunder Fortress has already informed the various powers to pay 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal to stay in the fortress. Out of the 7 powers, Zero Wing is the only one that has yet to hand over the 7 luminaries crystals. The due date is even tomorrow. If Zero Wing still doesn't pay up, it can't even stay in the Thunder Fortress past tomorrow. As soon as the berserker finished speaking, a passing swordsman suddenly stopped walking. Then, looking at the berserker, the cloaked swordsman curiously asked, "Excuse me, friend, what is this about paying 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal? Does the Thunder Fortress have such a rule? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3283, Chapter 357, 3 Overlords. Chapter 3283, Chapter 357, 3 Overlords. Chapter 357, 3 Overlords rule? Of course there's no such rule. The level 133 berserker laughed when he heard the passing swordsman's words. You must have just arrived at the Thunder Fortress, right? Right now, that person is in charge of the Thunder Fortress, and his word is the law here. That person has stated that all powers looking to stay in the Thunder Fortress must hand over 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal, and even hegemonic powers won't be exempted. Even hegemonic powers aren't exempted. Upon hearing the berserker's words, one of the cloaked girls standing behind the cloaked swordsman exclaimed, Isn't that too much of an exaggeration? Not to mention, the Thunder Fortress is protected by Tier 5 NPCs. Who could possibly threaten a hegemonic power here? Meanwhile, this cloaked girl was none other than Midsummer, who had entered the miniature ancient world with Shifeng. You can only say that because you don't know who that person is, the Berserker said, shaking his head. Even in the greater God's domain, the person I'm talking about is an existence akin to God. An existence akin to God. Keep on boasting, why don't you? Midsummer said, rolling her eyes. If it were in the past, I wouldn't have believed my own words, either. However, after arriving at the Thunder Fortress, I had no choice but to believe it, the Berserker said, remaining patient even after seeing Midsummer's response. Have you heard of the Paimon conglomerate before? Of course. That's one of the few conglomerates in the greater world, Midsummer said, nodding. Upon getting a positive response, the Berserker continued, the person I'm talking about comes from the Grey Seal family, one of the Paimon conglomerate's 3 great families. More specifically, he is young Master Dira, the youngest son of the Grey Seal family's patriarch. He is the one who set the rule I mentioned. There aren't many powers that would dare to go against that young master even in the greater God's domain, let alone our miniature ancient world. Dira? The youngest son of one of Payman's 3 overlords? Midsummer quickly thought of something after hearing the Berserker's words. Immediately, she turned to Shifeng and anxiously said through the team chat, Brother Black Flame, I'm afraid we're going to meet with some trouble during the World Passage's opening this time. A sum of 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal is indeed quite a lot, Wu Xiaoxiao, who had similarly concealed her identity, said. At the same time, she also understood why so many powers would willingly hand over 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal. The youngest son of one of the Paimon conglomerate's 3 overlords could indeed be regarded as an existence akin to God in the greater God's domain. Even the guild leaders of upper-ranking hegemonic powers wouldn't dare to offend Dira. After all, one word from Dira was most likely enough to have them removed from their positions. As for powers weaker than upper-ranking hegemonic powers, offending Dira was no different than asking to stop existing in the greater God's domain. However, Wu Xiaoxiao also had to admit that Dira was quite ruthless to be collecting 10,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal from every power looking to enter the Thunder Fortress. The problem I'm talking about isn't related to 7 luminaries crystals, Midsummer said, shaking her head. What I'm concerned about is Dira's hobby. His hobby. Jun Luosho, who had remained silent this entire time, suddenly spoke up. Is there a problem with his hobby? There's a big problem with it, Midsummer said with a wry smile. His hobby is collecting paragons, and he will recruit any paragon that catches his eye. This might seem great on the surface since getting recruited by Dira would mean hopping aboard the Paimon conglomerate's ship, but that can't be any further from the truth. The paragons recruited by Dira will not only have to sign their freedom away with a God's domain contract, but the benefits they will receive in exchange might not even be comparable to the internal geniuses of a corporation. Dira was incredibly well known in the Starlight realm. Firstly, it was because he was the most beloved son of the Divine Seal Saint, one of the Paimon conglomerate's 3 overlords. Secondly, it was because he had recruited many non-conglomerate paragons and would have them collect various legendary weapons and equipment for him. Or, more specifically, Dira was snatching the opportunities of these paragons to strengthen himself. At this point, the name of Black Flame had already become incredibly famous in the ancient River Kingdom and its surrounding countries. It was also publicly known that Shifeng wasn't affiliated with any conglomerate. So, the likelihood of Dira recruiting him was high. Meanwhile, so long as Shifeng signed a God's domain contract with Dira, he'd have to spend the rest of his life tied to Dira. As for putting up a resistance, if even upper-ranking hegemonic powers dared not offend Dira, what could a paragon with no background possibly do? If that's the case, maybe we should delay meeting up with Big Sis Hidden Soul and the others, guild leader. It won't be too late to group up after the world passage is open, Wu Xiaoxiao hurriedly said. Dira's identity was extraordinary. However, whether it was joining Dira or rejecting Dira's invitation, neither was a good option. The best action to take in this situation would be to avoid Dira as much as possible. Shifeng did not respond immediately. Instead, he scanned his surroundings for a moment before saying, "Your idea is good, but it seems the other party is one step ahead of you." As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, Midsummer, Wu Xiaoxiao, and Jun Luosha immediately sensed a person appearing next to their party. The other party was a level 136, Tier 4 assassin, and he looked like he was, at most, 17 or 18 years old. Yet, despite how young he looked, he gave off an incredibly dangerous feeling comparable to what they felt from Saint Nine. A paragon comparable to Saint Nine? Surprise flashed in Jun Luosha's eyes as she looked at the assassin youth. Despite being the Green God Corporation's #1 genius, she felt she couldn't even hold a candle to the assassin youth before her. Currently, she was still at the standard of ordinary fourth-floor experts, and she would need to make significant improvements before she could reach the standard of titled expert. Yet, the assassin youth already had strength close to rivaling Saint Nine. After making a sudden appearance next to Shifeng's party, the assassin youth, with a wooden expression, quietly looked at Shifeng, showing no intentions of launching a sneak attack. "Greetings, Guild Leader Black Flame," the assassin youth said emotionlessly like a robot. "Young Master Dira has heard about your arrival at the Thunder Fortress, so he has gone out of his way to invite you to the Thunder Restaurant for a meeting. How did you find us so quickly?" Wu Xiaoxiao was a little astonished by the assassin youth's words. It hadn't been more than half an hour since they got off the flying ship. They had even worn black cloaks to hide their identities. Yet, Dira's henchmen still managed to find them. Their reconnaissance capabilities were truly terrifying. "It's simply because they have total control over the fortress," Shifeng calmly said as he surveyed his surroundings. "I was wondering why there are so many people fond of staying invisible in the fortress, but by the looks of things, it seems these people are members of Dira's Shadowguard Legion." "That is correct," the assassin youth said, not bothering to hide the fact about the Shadowguard Legion after realizing that Shifeng had seen through the Shadowguard's concealment. "We are the young master's Shadowguards, and we currently have the entire Thunder Fortress under our surveillance. So, I suggest you abandon any thoughts of leaving the Thunder Fortress. Even Trekt, the current rank 1 player on the God list, shouldn't think of leaving the Thunder Fortress once he sets foot into this place." Midsummer was incensed by the assassin youth's words. However, she also realized that the moment the assassin youth announced that he was Dira's envoy, their party no longer had a choice. They'd be publicly offending him if they refused to meet with Dira. He'd have a justifiable reason to take action against them at that time. Yet, if they chose to meet with Dira, there would likely be only one outcome. "Since young Master Dira is inviting me with such sincerity, lead the way, then," Shifeng calmly said. "If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3284, Chapter 358, Astonishing Strike. Chapter 3284, Chapter 358, Astonishing Strike. Chapter 358, Astonishing Strike. Thunder Fortress, Thunder Restaurant. The Thunder Restaurant was situated in the sky above the Thunder Fortress, overlooking the entire fortress. However, because the restaurant was situated 1,000 meters in the air, thunderclouds and lightning arcs constantly surrounded it. One touch from these lightning arcs was enough to vaporize a Tier 4 player. So, if players wished to reach the Thunder Restaurant, they'd have to do so using a small flying ship. When Midsummer, Wu Xiaoxiao, and Jun Luosha arrived at the Thunder Restaurant, they couldn't help but be awed by the restaurant's extravagance and the view they got to see from the restaurant. Looking down from the restaurant's entrance, they could see thousands of ships docked in the fortress down below. There was also a constant stream of ships sailing in and out of the fortress. This was an incredible sight that one could rarely see in God's domain. Meanwhile, after Shifeng's party of 4 entered the 9-story-tall restaurant, Midsummer and the others were given another shock. Currently, all of the guests dining in the restaurant were executive members of the various hegemonic powers. Ordinary players were not qualified to set foot into this place at all. Moreover, the prices the restaurant charged for its food were utterly criminal. Rather than coins, players had to pay in 7 luminaries crystals for the meals here. Meanwhile, any random meal here cost over 100 units of 7 luminaries crystal. Yet, despite the exorbitant prices, The restaurant was packed with players enthusiastically stuffing themselves with food. How smart of these people, Shifeng commented as he watched the various hegemonic powers executives gorging themselves with food and beverages. However, he wasn't particularly surprised by their behavior. Smart. Jun Luosha was puzzled by Shifeng's comment. She failed to see how any of these people here were smart. In her opinion, these people were utterly prodigious. After all, paying over 100 units of 7 luminaries crystal for a single meal was unthinkable even in the greater god's domain. The food they're eating isn't your normal fare, Shifeng said, chuckling. All of these meals are a craftsman chef's cooking. Players who consume them will see an improvement in their physique and the strength of their mana. You will rarely find such meals, even in the greater god's domain. You won't lose out even if you pay 1,000 units of 7 luminaries crystal for a meal, let alone 100 units. Although these meals will only provide improvements on the first consumption, subsequent consumptions will allow players to enter an ethereal state that can drastically improve their learning capabilities temporarily. A craftsman chef's cooking? Midsummer nearly drooled when she heard Shifeng's explanation. The chef class was a lifestyle class similar to the forger and alchemist classes, and chefs could be categorized into basic chefs, advanced chefs, master chefs, grandmaster chefs, and craftsman chefs. Normally, only 1 in 10,000 lifestyle players could become a grandmaster, while only 1 in 100,000 grandmasters could become a craftsman. In other words, the chances of a lifestyle player becoming a craftsman was 1 in 1 billion. Because of their rarity, every craftsman would be highly respected by even upper-ranking hegemonic powers. The status of craftsman was vastly superior to even paragons such as Saint Nine. Meanwhile, in the case of craftsman chefs, Midsummer had never even heard of one existing in the ancient River Kingdom or the several dozen neighboring kingdoms and empires. While Midsummer was thinking of the Thunder Restaurant's food, their party arrived before the top-floor VIP room under the assassin youth's lead. Currently, there were 6 Tier 4 experts standing guard outside the room, every one of them radiating an aura superior to Saint Nine. Only, unlike Saint Nine, these 6 experts looked like they were well above 50 years of age. Every one of them also wore the Paimon conglomerate's Paimon Fang Guard emblem, an indicator that they were experts capable of transcending tiers. After the assassin youth informed the 6 guards of the purpose of their visit, the 6 guards opened the doors to the VIP room for Shifeng's party of 4. When Midsummer, Wu Xiaoxiao, and Jun Luosha entered the VIP room, they couldn't help but gasp. Currently, about a dozen or so people were sitting in the room half the size of a football field. The majority of these people were either the vice-guild leaders of hegemonic powers or experts on the miniature ancient world's god list. Even Trecht, the god list's rank 1 player, was present among the people dining in the room. Out of these dozen or so people, the most inconspicuous person would have to be Thousand Scars, who was regarded as the #1 genius among the miniature ancient world's native players. When Thousand Scars saw Shifeng appearing in the room, she was given quite a surprise. As for the most dazzling person in this room, that honor would have to go to the delicate young man sitting in the center. Although the young man looked like he was only 13 or 14, the equipment he wore was so dazzling it bordered on blinding. A fragmented legendary equipment set. Search me for the original. Indeed, the young man was clad in a fragmented legendary equipment set. It was even a 6-piece set. Moreover, he also carried a long sword of indiscernible quality by his waist. Even though the youth was only a Tier 4 swordsman, his basic attributes could probably rival a bona fide Tier 5 sword saint already. Meanwhile, standing behind this youth were 4 middle-aged men and women. Even without doing anything, these 4 people radiated an aura rivaling legendary-ranked archaic species. Every one of them was leagues above Saint Nine. Black Flame. I heard your name as soon as I arrived in this miniature ancient world, the delicate young man said indifferently as he gnawed on a piece of meat. Although your rank on the god list is far lower than Trecht's, you still meet my minimum requirements. How about joining my Shadow Guard Legion? I can let you start as a party leader. Once your strength improves, I might even introduce you to my father. As soon as the delicate youth finished speaking, the oldest man, a berserker with graying hair, standing behind the youth, suddenly shouted, "Black Flame! Hurry up and thank the young master. This is the biggest opportunity you will get in your life. Countless paragons in the Starlight Realm can't even meet the young master even if they want to. Not only do you get to meet the young master now, but you can even become a party leader in the young master's Shadowguard Legion. You might even get a chance to meet the Patriarch in the future. Not even the Paimon conglomerate's paragons can get such an opportunity. Upon hearing the delicate youth's and the middle-aged berserker's words, many of the vice guild leaders of hegemonic powers present couldn't help but snicker. As for Flanders, who was also here on behalf of the Tower Alliance, he revealed an ugly expression when he heard the two's words. Everyone present understood that the opportunity the middle-aged berserker spoke of was nonsense. It was nothing but an empty promise from Dira. It'd be more appropriate to say that Dira was asking Shifeng to sign a slave contract. Meanwhile, in response to Dira's offer, Shifeng shook his head and calmly said, "Forgive me for turning down your offer, young Master Dira. It is best if you leave that party leader position for someone who needs it more. I still have matters to tend to, so if there is nothing else you need me for, I will be taking my leave first." As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, silence filled the room. Even Dira had stopped chewing his food, his expression turning extraordinarily grim. Immediately afterward, a cold aura spread across the entire room. Black flame. How dare you refuse the young master's kindness? The middle-aged berserker bellowed at Shifeng. "I'll teach you a lesson in humility on behalf of the young master." After saying so, the middle-aged berserker reached for the battle axe on his back and swung the weapon at Shifeng, the terrifying aura he emitted causing not just the VIP room but also the entire Thunder restaurant to tremble. Humility? Is he even worthy of that? After glancing at the oncoming axe, Shifeng unsheathed the Winter of Eternal Night and swung it. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3285, Chapter 359, Becoming Enemies with an Overlord? Chapter 3285, Chapter 359, Becoming Enemies with an Overlord? Chapter 359, Becoming Enemies with an Overlord? TL Notes. Made a change to Chapter 358, Original. Currently, about a dozen or so people were sitting in the room. Changed to, currently, several dozen people were sitting in the room. Thunder Restaurant, top floor VIP room. As soon as Shifeng finished speaking, silence enveloped the entire room. At the same time, the several dozen guests dining in the room couldn't help but shudder. How dare he? Thousand Scars, clad in silver-grey leather armor, was also greatly surprised by Shifeng's response. For a moment, she even suspected that Shifeng might not know Dira's identity. Otherwise, there was no way he'd dare to turn down Dira's offer without hesitation and in such a blatant manner. The Paimon conglomerate might not be as powerful as the Galaxy conglomerate, but it was still a bona fide conglomerate in the greater world. Meanwhile, Dira was the youngest and most favored son of the Divine Seal Saint, one of the Paimon conglomerate's three overlords. Because of Dira's identity, many of the Paimon conglomerate's successors sought to befriend Dira to gain the Divine Seal Saint's support. After all, not only was the Divine Seal Saint one of Paimon's three overlords, but he was also in control of many of the conglomerate cities and a strong contender for the position of the conglomerate's #1 expert. In addition, the Divine Seal Saint also had the Divine Seal Legion under his command. The Divine Seal Legion was made up solely of Tier 6 experts, and there were a whopping 500 of them. Just the number of Tier 6 experts the Legion had already surpassed what hegemonic powers had by a large margin. Moreover, every one of these Tier 6 experts was in possession of 2 or 3 pieces of legendary equipment, with some even having legendary weapons. Outside of the Paimon conglomerate, though, Dira was an existence feared by everyone. This was because the Divine Seal Saint had proven that he was willing to destroy an upper-ranking hegemonic power simply because his youngest son received poor treatment from the power. The war the Divine Seal Saint waged back then had shaken the entire Starlight Realm and struck fear into the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers. After the incident, everyone came to understand just how much the Divine Seal Saint favored his youngest son. It was so much that even the Paimon conglomerate's successors couldn't help but grow envious of Dira. It was also for this reason that the various upper-ranking hegemonic powers guild leaders would have a huge headache whenever they encountered Dira. Although the power the Divine Seal Saint destroyed was only a budding upper-ranking hegemonic power that didn't have the backing of a conglomerate, it should still be a very difficult task to destroy it completely. Yet, the Divine Seal Saint and his Divine Seal Legion had accomplished this feat, which was enough to showcase the Legion's tremendous strength. Meanwhile, Shifeng had essentially humiliated Dira in public by unceremoniously refusing Dira's invitation in front of everyone. Not even the Green God Corporation's helmsman wouldn't dare to do such a thing. It seems he might not even be leaving this room alive, a young male assassin with pure elven blood said, a look of interest appearing on his face as he looked at Shifeng. I wonder how long he'll last against the 4 beast warriors. Meteor was seated next to the elven assassin. When the Crimson Sword Emperor heard the elven assassin's words, he turned to look at the 4 middle-aged men and women standing behind Dira. Then, he said, "What nonsense are you talking about, Trecht? The 4 beast warriors are guards sent by the Divine Seal Saint to protect Dira. Even though they don't currently have the fragmented legendary equipment sets they normally use, I doubt you and I can take them on even if we get promoted to Tier 5. Not to mention, Black Flame is still at Tier 4. Black Flame is still too young," Trecht, the pure-blooded elf, said as he shook his head. He might have surpassed Laroja and Cross, but a genius is nothing more than a genius at the end of the day. In front of individuals like Dira, even the 100 Nations Paragon Battle's first Paragon won't amount to anything, let alone a measly kingdom's first Paragon. The Ancient River Kingdom's first Paragon? Invincible among Tier 4? These statuses might be enough to deter the various hegemonic powers, but they were nothing to Dira. Dira stood at the apex of the greater god's domain. For him, geniuses and paragons like Shifeng were but a common sight. Thus, if Shifeng refused to comply, Dira could simply crush him. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that a genius like Shifeng had no qualifications to be arrogant in front of Dira. It was only because of Dira's fondness for collecting geniuses that he had gone out of his way to recruit Shifeng. Since Shifeng had outright refused Dira's invitation, he had essentially made an enemy out of Dira. Now, not even the Green God Corporation could save him from this situation. As soon as Trecht finished speaking, Platinum Behemoth, the leader of the 4 beast warriors, lunged at Shifeng with his battle axe. In response, Shifeng executed a backhanded slash to meet the berserker's axe. Boom! Smoke instantly spread across the room as the 2 weapons collided. Fortunately, the power of the room's defensive magic arrays was already raised to its limit. So, even though the power of the shockwaves generated by the collision reached the Tier 5 standard already, they failed to affect the room in the slightest. Nobody present was surprised by the room's robustness. Every structure within the Thunder Fortress was extraordinary. Not even Tier 5 players should think of causing any damage to the Thunder Fortress, let alone Tier 4 players. However, when the dust settled, the spectating crowd couldn't help but be surprised by what they saw. Contrary to everyone's expectations, Shifeng did not get killed or injured by Platinum Behemoth's axe. Instead, he had come out of the berserker's attack completely unscathed. Moreover, he had even stopped Platinum Behemoth's axe. The massive weapon stopped half a meter away from him and could not advance even an inch further. At a glance, it was obvious that Shifeng's strength attribute was above Platinum Behemoth's. It seems his strength has increased yet again. When Meteor, who was also a swordsman like Shifeng, saw Shifeng holding his ground against Platinum Behemoth, he couldn't help but be astonished. Compared to when he met Shifeng at the Land of Ancient Dragons, the current Shifeng's strength was clearly much higher. In fact, Shifeng's strength had already reached the standard of Tier 5 berserkers. Otherwise, there was no way Platinum Behemoth could have lost to Shifeng in a contest of strength. So he does have some strength. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant, Trecht said, a hint of fighting spirit appearing in his eyes. The swordsman class wasn't known for its strength. Instead, it was a class with a good balance between agility and strength. If a swordsman could match a berserker of the same tier in strength, the combat power the swordsman could exhibit would be far more frightening than the berserker. While everyone was feeling surprised, Dira suddenly started clapping his hands. Not bad. Not bad. Dira said as he resumed eating. I don't often see swordsmen of the same tier matching Platinum's strength. I can give you another chance. Join my Shadowguard Legion, and I will give you a vice team leader position. I will even forgive you for your previous rude behavior. However, Shifeng remained indifferent even after hearing Dira's words. Just when Platinum Behemoth was about to rebuke Shifeng again, Shifeng suddenly thrust the Winter of Eternal Night at the Berserker. After Shifeng obtained the Ancient Oath and gained 10% of the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon's basic attributes, his strength and agility had already gone beyond the standard of ordinary Tier 5 Berserkers and Assassins. Platinum Behemoth felt like a truck had just hit him when he blocked Shifeng's thrust with his axe, his body getting pushed back against his will. Then, before Platinum Behemoth could take proper defensive measures, the Winter of Eternal Night suddenly separated from his axe and cut across him horizontally. Radiant Night. Platinum Behemoth's HP instantly fell to 0, his HP disappearing so quickly that not even the female cleric standing behind him could heal him before his vision darkened and his body collapsed to the floor. Immediately, shock and silence filled the room. I, Black Flame, do not need your forgiveness for my actions. After Shifeng obtained the Ancient Oath and gained 10% of the mutated Frostflame Phantom Dragon's basic attributes, his strength and agility had already gone beyond the standard of ordinary Tier 5 Berserkers and Assassins. Platinum Behemoth felt like a truck had just hit him when he blocked Shifeng's thrust with his axe, his body getting pushed back against his will. Then, before Platinum Behemoth could take proper defensive measures, the Winter of Eternal Night suddenly separated from his axe and cut across him horizontally. Radiant Night. Platinum Behemoth's HP instantly fell to 0, his HP disappearing so quickly that not even the female cleric standing behind him could heal him before his vision darkened and his body collapsed to the floor. Immediately, shock and silence filled the room. I, Black Flame, do not need your forgiveness for my actions. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3286, Chapter 360, Miniature Ancient Worlds No. 1. Chapter 3286, Chapter 360, Miniature Ancient Worlds No. 1. Chapter 360, Miniature Ancient Worlds No. 1. Along with Platinum Behemoth's death, the room became deathly silent yet again. Platinum Behemoth got killed? I must be dreaming. That's Platinum Behemoth, for crying out loud. How can he get killed in one hit? How did he kill Platinum Behemoth in one hit? Does he have legendary equipment? The people in the room couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Platinum Behemoth getting killed. Platinum Behemoth might not have any fame in the miniature ancient world and wasn't even listed on the Seven Luminaries Alliance's god list, but he was incredibly well known in the Starlight realm. It all started when Platinum Behemoth participated in the Paimon Conglomerate's invitational competition 40 years ago. During the competition, Platinum Behemoth defeated many geniuses and paragons to win an invitation from the Paimon Conglomerate. Afterward, he got recruited by the Paimon Conglomerate and joined the Divine Seal Legion after getting promoted to Tier 6. Currently, although Platinum Behemoth was no longer part of the Divine Seal Legion due to his growing age, the fact that the Divine Seal Saint had entrusted Dira's safety to him showed just how much faith the Divine Seal Saint had put in his strength. It was true that players could get resurrected from death in God's domain. However, if a player's immortal soul got extinguished completely, it would be the end of their career in God's domain. It would be extraordinarily difficult for them to set foot into God's domain again in their lifetime. God's domain was a place with countless opportunities. Whether a person was looking to improve their mental strength, extend their lifespan, or seek status and wealth, the best way to do so would be to enter and grow in God's domain. While players might not have the ability to completely extinguish immortal souls at Tier 3 and Tier 4, they would gain the ability to do so at Tier 5 and Tier 6. Although the various kingdoms and countries had created rules forbidding higher-tier players from attacking lower-tier players, the Divine Seal Saint naturally wouldn't trust such rules to ensure his son's safety. Hence, he had tasked Tier 6 experts to become Dira's bodyguards. Only, due to Dira entering the miniature ancient world's restrictions, Tier 6 experts such as Platinum Beast had no choice but to lower their tiers to follow him. Legendary equipment. When Trekt looked at Shifeng again, he suddenly felt immense pressure coming from the other party. It should be known that Platinum Behemoth was currently equipped with 2 or 3 pieces of fragmented legendary equipment and 1 fragmented legendary weapon. Logically, it should be impossible for another Tier 4 player to kill him in one hit. The only explanation for this unbelievable situation was that Shifeng was in possession of a piece of legendary equipment, which gave him a massive advantage in basic attributes over Platinum Behemoth. How does he have legendary equipment? In Meteor's case, he couldn't help but grow envious and confused as he looked at Shifeng. After all, this was the miniature ancient world they were talking about. Thus far, even the Paimon conglomerate had only managed to secure a few clues pertaining to legendary equipment right now, and it would take at least another 2 or 3 months before the conglomerate could actually get its hands on any legendary equipment. So, how did Shifeng get his hands on one so soon? It should be known that for experts of their caliber, obtaining a piece of legendary equipment at this point in time would instantly make them the strongest expert in the miniature ancient world. Once they entered the greater god's domain, the legendary equipment would also be of great help to their growth. While everyone was feeling envious over Shifeng's ownership of a piece of legendary equipment, Flanders looked at the situation with a grim expression. It's truly over now. Flanders thought, his heart growing cold when he saw Shifeng killing Platinum Behemoth. Flanders was more or less acquainted with Shifeng, so he was very optimistic about the other party's future. However, as the vice-guild leader of the Tower Alliance, Flanders knew just how frightening the greater world's conglomerates could be when provoked. Even if they were currently in the miniature ancient world, having a piece of legendary equipment wouldn't be enough for Shifeng to go up against Dira's guards. Shifeng's act of killing Platinum Behemoth wouldn't deter Dira, either. On the contrary, all Shifeng had done was further anger Dira. Legendary equipment. When Dira saw Platinum Behemoth getting killed, not only did he not react in panic, but he even revealed a smile. So this is why you have refused my offer so confidently. It just so happens that I'm in need of legendary equipment, so I'll be borrowing yours for the time being. After saying so, Dira turned to the 3 remaining beast warriors behind him and said, I want him alive. I will take my time playing with him once we return to the greater god's domain. Understood. Upon receiving Dira's command, the 3 remaining beast warriors each took out a purple gold potion and drank it. Immediately afterward, their auras exploded, and their life ratings underwent a qualitative transformation. If someone were to use an advanced identification skill on the 3 right now, they would find that the 3 beast warriors were no longer tier 4 players but bona fide tier 5 players instead. A level 137, tier 5 Grand Wizard. A level 136, tier 5 Sacred Sky Knight. A level 136, tier 5, Brilliant Cleric Saint. This is life transition. A lost potion. Moreover, 3 of them. The legendary potion that's rumored to be able to promote its user by 1 tier. The peanut gallery gasped when they saw the display of wealth before them. None of them had expected to see the rumored life transition potion in the miniature ancient world. They also didn't expect the Paimon conglomerate to give each of the 4 beast warriors a bottle. Thousand Scars, in particular, gaped in shock at this scene. The life transition potion. Thousand Scars had only ever seen the life transition potion in ancient texts. Meanwhile, from what she read, the potion could forcibly increase a player's tier by 1, up to a maximum of tier 5. However, unlike other potions, the life transition potion's effects were permanent. The life transition potion was basically a free pass for players to get promoted. They wouldn't need to try to improve their mana body or create their own mana body. If players consumed the potion to reach tier 3, they would automatically receive a gold mana body based on the available templates. If consumed to reach tier 5, players would be given a tailor-made tier 5 mana body that reached the gold standard. For players incapable of securing a high-ranking mana body, the life transition potion was something they dreamed of obtaining. Because of the life transition potion's benefits, the value of 1 bottle was equivalent to 1 piece of legendary equipment. Yet, now, 3 life transition potions were used in the blink of an eye. Meanwhile, when Midsummer, Wu Xiaoxiao, and Jun Luosha saw this unexpected development, they couldn't help but grow a little flustered. They never thought the Paimon conglomerate would have such a trump card prepared. Compared to Tier 4 players with Tier 5 strength, real Tier 5 players not only possessed Tier 5 basic attributes and physique but also Tier 5 skills and spells. At the same time, Tier 5 players would also gain greater effects from their weapons and equipment than Tier 4 players due to them having higher base values for their basic attributes. Usually, the base values of a Tier 5 player would be twice as high as a Tier 4 player. In other words, if the base values of a Tier 4 player's basic attributes were uniformly at 1000, the base values of a Tier 5 player's basic attributes would be at 2000. In this situation, if these two players were to put on a piece of equipment that offered a 100% bonus to basic attributes, the Tier 4 player's basic attributes would go from 1000 to 2000, while the Tier 5 player's basic attributes would go from 2000 to 4000. In the blink of an eye, the initial difference of 1000 points had turned into a difference of 2000 points. Needless to say, the difference in basic attributes between Tier 4 and Tier 5 players would only increase even further as more percentage-based bonuses were added into the calculation. This was why it was incredibly difficult for players to transcend tiers. It might be commonly known that Tier 4 players could transcend tiers if they had a piece of legendary equipment equipped, but that was only enough for them to hold their ground against a Tier 5 player. It wasn't enough for them to defeat a Tier 5 player. Shifeng might possess powerful basic attributes, but even he would be powerless against 3 Tier 5 players on the 4 Beast Warriors standard. "You've been quite arrogant just now, kid," the Tier 5 Sacred Sky Knight said, sneering as he walked up to Shifeng. "How about showing that arrogance to us again? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible." Chapter 3287, Chapter 361, Tier 5. Chapter 3287, Chapter 361, Tier 5. Chapter 361, Tier 5. The Tier 5 Sacred Sky Knight's mockery of Shifeng caused the silent crowd to laugh. A Tier 4 player would have to be ignorant of the word death to act arrogantly in front of a Tier 5 player. Shifeng might have a piece of legendary equipment, but that would only put him on the same level as ordinary Tier 5 players who didn't have decent equipment and couldn't even conquer the World Tower's 4th floor. If Shifeng were to go up against a Tier 5 4th floor expert, he'd have an incredibly tough time. This was because players of this standard no longer had any shortcomings. The degree of control they had over their bodies and their surroundings would also be at the Domain Realm standard at the very least, with some having even reached the Beyond Domain Realm. They could even exhibit the power of silver combat techniques with their every action. Unless Shifeng was extremely outstanding in one aspect, he'd have no chance of turning the tides against a Tier 5 4th floor expert. For example, if Shifeng had grasped a gold combat technique, it wouldn't matter even if he went up against an opponent with superior basic attributes and could exhibit the power of silver combat techniques through their every action. The effects of a gold combat technique would give him enough of an advantage that he could have a chance at victory. But grasping a gold combat technique was easier said than done. Experts who had successfully grasped a gold combat technique were exceedingly rare, even in the greater god's domain. For this reason, once an expert reached the 4th floor standard, it was nigh impossible for them to lose to players of a lower tier. Not to mention, Shifeng's current opponent wasn't just a 4th floor expert but a paragon. "Don't get ahead of yourself, Krak," the female brilliant cleric saint standing nearby said, chuckling. "The young master has already said to capture him alive. If you kill him now, we'll have to go through the trouble of finding him again to capture him." The Sky Knight named Iron Crocodile briefly looked at the cleric saint when he heard the other party's words. Then, he returned his focus to Shifeng while nonchalantly saying, "Don't worry. I know what I'm supposed to do. You two, on the other hand, should make sure you don't let him get away." Before Iron Crocodile even finished speaking, he brandished the long sword he wielded, executing a holy cross at Shifeng. Not only did the attack have a large AoE, but its power also far exceeded the attack Platinum Behemoth had previously used against Shifeng. "Guild leader, be careful," Wu Xiaoxiao subconsciously shouted, shocked by Iron Crocodile's attack. Iron Crocodile's attack was incredibly fast and sudden. He had abruptly attacked Shifeng while talking to the cleric saint nearby, and he had completed his attack by the time he finished speaking. He did not reveal any killing intent throughout the entire process. He also didn't show any indications that he was going to attack. He had completed his entire attack against Shifeng as naturally as if he were breathing. However, unlike Wu Xiaoxiao, Shifeng was ready for Iron Crocodile's sudden attack. Or, more specifically, any expert who had reached the Domain Realm's third step could have adequately utilized their sixth sense to predict Iron Crocodile's sneak attack and taken preemptive defensive measures. Of course, that was under the precondition that they could keep up with Iron Crocodile's Tier 5 reaction speed. Otherwise, even if they managed to predict Iron Crocodile's actions through their sixth sense, it wouldn't matter if their bodies couldn't keep up. Without hesitation, Shifeng raised the Winter of Eternal Night horizontally before him to defend himself. Boom. When you're just trying to make great content at me. Following a loud explosion, Shifeng stumbled 2 steps backward, the Winter of Eternal Night in his hand humming as it violently vibrated. Shifeng's HP had also fallen by roughly 3%. Your strength attribute really is something. No wonder you managed to kill our leader in one hit, Iron Crocodile said, feeling a little surprised to see that Shifeng had only stumbled 2 steps backward after blocking his attack. However, despite his surprise, Iron Crocodile did not stop moving. But how will you fare against this next move? Immediately, Iron Crocodile split into 9 copies of himself. Then, the 9 doppelgangers began flashing in and out of existence around Shifeng, the speed and dexterity they displayed stunning the Tier 4 experts present. Is this 9 absolute shadows, one of the rumored 99 absolute techniques? When Trecht looked at the 9 untraceable doppelgangers, a flame of passion burning in his eyes. As for Thousand Scars, she hurriedly started making a recording of Iron Crocodile's 9 absolute shadows, afraid the fight would end too quickly. There were 99 absolute techniques in the Greater God's domain. These 99 absolute techniques were advanced silver combat techniques recorded and ranked by the 7 Luminaries Alliance. Meanwhile, it was publicly recognized that any player who grasped one of these absolute techniques could achieve absolute strength. Among the 99 absolute techniques, 9 absolute shadows was sought after by all assassins in God's domain. Yet, it was now being used by Iron Crocodile, a Guardian Knight. Although 9 absolute shadows ranked 55 out of the 99 absolute techniques, it ranked 3rd out of all the footwork type absolute techniques. It was also the highest ranked footwork type absolute technique accessible to the public. As for the 1st and 2nd ranked techniques, they were monopolized by 2 apex powers, and only the executives of these apex powers could qualify to learn the techniques. However, even though the 7 Luminaries Alliance offered all players a chance to learn 9 absolute shadows, the cost of doing so wasn't something ordinary experts could afford. Or, more specifically, only Tier 6 titled experts could afford to learn it. Meanwhile, in response to Iron Crocodile's 9 absolute shadows, Shifeng used World of Frost and executed Sword's Orbit without hesitation. Immediately, within the domain of his world creation, the 9 frost swords he summoned transformed into countless stars that orbited around him. Ninefold Swords Orbit. Boom. 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 The sound of metal colliding reverberated continuously in the spacious dining hall. In only a few seconds, nearly 100 exchanges had taken place already. Meanwhile, every collision would not only see several frost swords get sent flying, but a visible chunk of Shifeng's HP bar would also disappear. In no time, Shifeng's HP had already fallen to just 1/3 of its maximum. This sight caused Midsummer and Wu Xiaoxiao to panic. Yet, even though they wished to help Shifeng, they couldn't. This was because neither of them could keep up with Shifeng's and Iron Crocodile's speed. When Shifeng's HP was about to drop below 10%, Shifeng finally found an opportunity to take out a Grandmaster regeneration potion and consume it, instantly recovering all of the HP he lost. As expected of the 9 absolute shadows. Even Tier 5 assassins will have trouble keeping up with this speed, Shifeng thought. He had a headache going up against Iron Crocodile. He had only been on the defensive throughout the entire exchange. If it weren't for the frost swords giving him a numerical advantage and letting him pinpoint Iron Crocodile's position, he could have never defended against the Sacred Sky Knight's offensive. You are merely prolonging your suffering by drinking a potion. Immediately, Iron Crocodile accelerated once again. He did not plan to give Shifeng more chances to recover. Although regeneration potions in God's domain typically had a cooldown of 2 minutes or more, he couldn't help but feel a little upset when he saw Shifeng's HP recovering to full. When Shifeng saw Iron Crocodile's speed increasing even further, he stopped staying on the defensive. Immediately, he raised the Winter of Eternal Night and swung it down hard. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3288, Chapter 362, Azura's Sword. Chapter 3288, Chapter 362, Azura's Sword. Chapter 362, Azura's Sword. Boom. A dazzling light flooded the room. At the same time, everyone in the room felt as if space within the room was being compressed. Even experts like Meteor and Trecht felt their bodies becoming cumbersome, so much so that an ordinary Tier 4 player could kill them. As for Thousand Scars, she couldn't even move her body, feeling as if she was frozen solid. A quick look at me will leave you more fulfilled. Is this guild leader Black Flame's true strength? Jun Luosha, standing by the room's entrance, couldn't help but be fascinated by the small glimpse of the attack her eyes had just caught. Although the incident on the flying ship already gave her an indicator of Shifeng's strength, what she saw in this room made her strongly reevaluate her opinion of Shifeng. First, Shifeng killed Platinum Beast, an expert superior to Saint 9, in one hit. Now, he had even executed an attack of unimaginable power. Sensing the effects Shifeng's attack had on the surrounding environment, Jun Luosha did not doubt, even for a moment, that this attack could heavily injure a Tier 5 legendary monster of the same level. And if a Tier 5 player were struck by this attack, it was unlikely they would survive. Shifeng's attack was a combination of the spatial imprisonment effect and unbelievable speed. Even if she got promoted into a Tier 5 Sword Saint, she doubted she could survive such an attack. When the smoke in the room dissipated, Iron Crocodile remained standing in his original position, his sword and shield raised. His HP, though, had fallen for the first time. Although it was only a meager 2%, it was a fact that Shifeng had successfully damaged the Tier 5 Sacred Sky Knight. Incredible. No wonder you can beat Leroja and Cross. With that strike just now, you can even get into the top 500 of the Galaxy Conglomerate's invitational competition, Iron Crocodile said as he used his long sword to tape the white mark left by Shifeng's attack on his shield. Then, he sneered and continued, "It's a pity you won't get the chance to participate in the invitational competition and receive the Galaxy Conglomerate's attention." Immediately, an invisible pressure descended upon the hall. The feeling Iron Crocodile gave off also underwent a tremendous change, his current aura causing even the likes of Thousand Scars and Midsummer to feel suffocated. He's finally getting serious. When Trecht sensed the change in Iron Crocodile's aura, he didn't react in surprise. Instead, he simply revealed a wry smile. He hasn't been serious all this time? Thousand Scars turned to look at Trecht, shocked by the latter's words. She had met with many Tier 5 players before. Although they were admittedly much weaker than Iron Crocodile, she found it hard to imagine that Iron Crocodile's performance thus far was him taking it easy. "Of course he hasn't," Trecht said, rolling his eyes at Thousand Scars. "Did you not notice that apart from 9 absolute shadows, he hasn't used any other combat techniques or skills? He's been relying mainly on his basic attributes this entire time." Realization dawned on Thousand Scars when she heard Trecht's words, and she couldn't help but gasp. Indeed, Iron Crocodile hadn't used any other combat techniques apart from 9 absolute shadows this entire time. He hadn't even been using any skills or spells. Yet, even though he was mostly relying on his basic attributes, he still perfectly suppressed Shifeng. If Iron Crocodile was already capable of this much simply by relying on his basic attributes and one footwork-type combat technique, she couldn't even begin to imagine how strong he would be if he combined offensive silver combat techniques into his every attack. While Thousand Scars was letting her imagination run wild, the previously spectating Tier 5 Grand Wizard and brilliant Cleric Saint suddenly appeared next to Shifeng. "What are you two doing?" Iron Crocodile looked at his two companions in confusion. The three of them had previously agreed that he would be the main attacker while the other two would keep watch from beside to prevent Shifeng from escaping. After all, Shifeng was a Tier 4 player who had already reached the Tier 4 standard. While it might be easy for them to kill him, it was a different story if they wanted to capture him. They'd have great difficulty capturing him if he focused solely on escaping. The young master doesn't want to wait any longer and wants us to finish things up quickly, the cleric saint calmly answered. Fine, then. If that's what the young master wants, turning to Shifeng, Iron Crocodile said, you should feel fortunate, Black Flame. We've never gone to such great lengths, even when we captured a Tier 6 expert. To have the three of us come after you together is a great honor. However, you only have your own arrogance to blame for this outcome. When Iron Crocodile finished speaking, the Grand Wizard and Brilliant Cleric Saint had also finished chanting their respective incantations. Immediately, over a dozen magic arrays appeared in the air. With this, Black Flame will finally be gone. Thousand Scars inwardly sighed in relief when she saw the three remaining beast warriors taking action together. She had made it her goal to catch up to Black Flame ever since the man became the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon. However, after seeing Black Flame defeat not only Markless Blade but also living legends like La Roja and Cross, she couldn't help but feel a sense of hopelessness. After all, with such achievements under his belt, Black Flame's fame was bound to spread across the entire Starlight Realm sooner or later. This realization made her think that she would never be able to catch up to Black Flame's footsteps. But now, so what if Black Flame was an incredible genius? So what if Black Flame was the strongest player in the miniature ancient world? In front of Dira, Black Flame was no different than an ant. Just a few words from Dira were enough to end Black Flame's career in God's domain, and there was nothing Black Flame could do about it. However, despite seeing Iron Crocodile's group of three attacking him seriously, Shifeng reacted surprisingly calmly. Arrogance. I'm afraid you're still not worthy enough for me to get arrogant. After glancing at the three Tier 5 players around him, Shifeng took out a god crystal he had obtained from the mutated heroic spirit. Then, he used it to activate the ancient dragon's power he had received from Dragon Princess Kalisha, selecting the Winter of Eternal Night as the ability's target. This would also be the first time he had used Ancient Dragon's power after achieving a 120% legendary mana body and becoming a special life form. Shifeng had heard of Dira's name many times during his previous life, as the other party was considerably famous in the Starlight Realm. And although he had never clashed with the Paimon conglomerate before, he had a good understanding of the conglomerate's strength. If they were in the greater god's domain right now, he would have fled without hesitation. However, in the current miniature ancient world, there existed no person or power that could make him feel fear. This was also why he dared to come to this banquet, even though he knew it was a trap. After Shifeng finished speaking, silver flames suddenly rose around the Winter of Eternal Night. Although these flames were small, they radiated a bone-piercing chill that froze the entire room. As for Shifeng himself, he had seemingly undergone a complete transformation. Not only did his body exude soul-shuddering power, but he also radiated mana so powerful that it distorted the surrounding space. Subsequently, Shifeng raised the Winter of Eternal Night and pointed it at Iron Crocodile. Let's begin the second round, then, if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3289, Chapter 363, Legendary Weapons Hidden Effect. Chapter 3289, Chapter 363, Legendary Weapons Hidden Effect. Chapter 363, Legendary Weapons Hidden Effect. Tier 5. He became Tier 5 as well. Shifeng's astonishing transformation caused everyone present to mistakenly assume that he had similarly used some special means to promote himself into a Tier 5 Sword Saint. Or more specifically, aside from Shifeng becoming Tier 5, they couldn't think of any other reason that could allow Shifeng to undergo such a massive transformation. Guild leader Wu Xiaoxiao and Midsummer grew ecstatic when they saw Shifeng's mana seething. Shifeng might have had a hard time going up against 3 Tier 5 players as a Tier 4 player with Tier 5 standards, but it was a different story now if he had similarly become Tier 5. Now, he would have a fighting chance. So what if you got promoted to Tier 5? Iron Crocodile said. Although he didn't expect Shifeng's sudden transformation, he remained calm even when he realized Shifeng might have gotten promoted to Tier 5. Do you think you can defend against all three of us together? The Grand Wizard and brilliant Cleric Saint nodded in agreement. Shifeng's strength might have exceeded their expectations, but they still outnumbered him by 3-1. Moreover, they had an MT, a healer, and a DPS on their side. They could tank, heal, and do damage. They could even take down a Tier 5 legendary boss if they wanted to, let alone a Tier 5 player. While Iron Crocodile was buying time for the magic arrays in the air to finish forming, Shifeng suddenly swung the Winter of Eternal Night at the magic arrays. Bang! 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 Immediately, the mana in the several dozen magic arrays froze, leading to the magic arrays crumbling apart one after another. A silencing effect. When Iron Crocodile saw the magic arrays breaking apart, he started eyeing Shifeng with more wariness. The silencing effect was a powerful weapon in God's domain. Not only could it put magical classes into despair but also physical classes. This was because players subjected to a silencing effect would be prohibited from using skills and spells, putting them at a considerable disadvantage in battle. No, this isn't a silencing effect, the Grand Wizard denied, shaking her head. Then, with a fearful look, she said, "This is mana freezing." Mana freezing? When Iron Crocodile heard the Grand Wizard's statement, he couldn't help but ask, "Are you sure you're not mistaken?" In God's domain, the silence and mana freezing effects might look similar on the surface, but the two's power was worlds apart. Silence only prevented players from using skills and spells, but mana freezing not only prevented players from using skills and spells normally but also combat techniques and mana techniques. "I won't be mistaken," the Grand Wizard said definitively. "Mana will stop flowing under the mana freezing effect. If you don't believe me, you can try to manipulate the mana around you." However, before Iron Crocodile could try what the Grand Wizard suggested, Shifeng suddenly appeared before Iron Crocodile and swung the Winter of Eternal Night at him, the slash creating a huge tear in space. Iron Crocodile reacted to the attack extremely quickly, his hand spontaneously lifting his shield to defend himself. Boom! A loud explosion shook the entire Thunder restaurant, followed by Iron Crocodile getting sent flying into a wall. Then, before anyone could react to the situation, Iron Crocodile suddenly shouted, "Retreat." It was a word that shouldn't have emerged from Iron Crocodile's mouth. Yet, not only did it come out of the sacred Sky Knight's mouth, but it had also echoed loudly throughout the room and in everyone's ears. Meanwhile, upon hearing these words, the eyes of the spectators in the room nearly bulged. This must be a lie. Thousand Scars couldn't believe her eyes as she stared at Iron Crocodile, who was embedded in the distant wall. Or, more specifically, the bisected shield in Iron Crocodile's left hand. One strike. With just one simple strike that didn't employ any techniques, Shifeng had cut apart Iron Crocodile's epic shield. Not even legendary world bosses of the same level could accomplish such a feat, especially not when the person wielding the epic shield was a Tier 5 Sacred Sky Knight. Even though Shifeng's attack had taken less than 10% of Iron Crocodile's HP, an indescribable sense of fear still assaulted the hearts of everyone present. At this moment, even Dira, who had remained calm and composed all this time, started to waver a little. So this is the case. No wonder LaRoja and Cross lost to him. When Trecht saw the clean cut through Iron Crocodile's bisected shield, bitterness and jealousy instantly colored his face. Only one thing could cut apart an epic shield so cleanly and effortlessly. It was also why Iron Crocodile and the others reacted so fearfully. A legendary weapon. Only weapons at the legendary rank or above could destroy an epic shield in one hit. Every legendary weapon possessed devastating might. With the help of a legendary weapon, even challenging Tier 6 players as a Tier 5 player would be possible, let alone challenging Tier 5 players as a Tier 4 player. It should be known that the gap between Tier 5 and Tier 6 was vastly bigger than between Tier 4 and Tier 5. It was so big that even a piece of legendary equipment couldn't mitigate the difference. Yet, legendary weapons could do so, which was also what made legendary weapons so frightening and precious. Because of how powerful legendary weapons were, It was publicly acknowledged in the greater gods domain that so long as a Tier 4 player wielded a legendary weapon, this player would be nigh invincible even among Tier 5 players. Unless a Tier 5 player was clad in a fragmented legendary equipment set and wielded a fragmented legendary weapon, they couldn't even hold their ground against such a Tier 4 player. So, even though the 3 beast warriors still outnumbered Shifeng, it probably wouldn't take Shifeng more than a few attacks to thoroughly destroy all of their weapons and equipment. Krak, we'll leave him to you. After exchanging looks with each other, the Grand Wizard and brilliant Cleric Saint turned around and ran to Dira in a panic. Different from an amateur like Trecht, they were Tier 6 experts who had worked under the Paimon conglomerate for many years already. So, the information they knew about God's domain far exceeded Trecht's knowledge of the game. If Shifeng merely had the ability to destroy epic weapons and equipment, they wouldn't have feared him at all. At worst, they'd die. As Dira's guards, they had long since grown accustomed to dying. What made them truly afraid weren't the basic attribute bonuses Shifeng received from his legendary weapon. Instead, it was the hidden effect commonly shared by legendary weapons. Soul annihilation. There weren't many things in God's domain that could completely destroy a player's immortal soul. Unfortunately, legendary weapons just so happened to be one of those things. Don't you think it's a little too late to be leaving now? After glancing at the 2 people running to Dira, Shifeng indifferently raised the legendary-ranked Winter of Eternal Night and lightly swung it in Dira's direction. Third sword, Holy Annihilation. Suddenly, space in the room stagnated, and everyone found themselves incapable of moving. The only thing they could do was watch as a dark sword light cut across the room, erasing everything in its path. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3290, Chapter 364, Poking a Hole Through the Heavens. Chapter 3290, Chapter 364, Poking a Hole Through the Heavens. Chapter 364, Poking a Hole Through the Heavens. Thunder Restaurant, top floor VIP room. Following the black sword light, a deathly silence enveloped the entire room as everyone stared at the same spot. Lord Dira? Thousand Scars fell into a daze as she looked at the shattered space and 2 scattered items in the middle of the room, her mind unable to believe what she was seeing was true. Dira, the most favored son of the Divine Seal Saint, one of the Paimon conglomerate's 3 overlords, was killed. Crazy. He is absolutely crazy. Meteor shot up from his seat when he saw Dira getting erased from the room. Then, he turned to look at the culprit behind Dira's death, his eyes full of fear. However, Meteor's fear didn't result from seeing Shifeng's space-shattering slash but Dira's death instead. In Meteor's opinion, Shifeng was already plenty crazy for refusing Dira's invitation and attacking Dira's bodyguards. After all, Dira was an existence whom even the guild leaders of the Starlight Realm's upper-ranking hegemonic powers had a headache dealing with. Dira simply wasn't an existence geniuses like them could afford to provoke. Yet, now, Shifeng had made things infinitely worse by killing Dira. The degree of insanity needed to do such a thing was through the heavens. For a time, Meteor couldn't help but wonder if Shifeng even knew fear. At this moment, Meteor, an internal genius of the Paimon conglomerate, wasn't the only one horrified by this situation. Everyone who had come to attend Dira's banquet was equally petrified. It's over. Things are truly over now. Flanders, the Tower Alliance's vice-guild leader, revealed a wry smile when he saw that Dira was no more. If Shifeng's previous act of defying Dira was considered only a minor transgression that could be remedied so long as Shifeng paid the appropriate price, then what Shifeng just did was no different than poking a hole through the heavens. Now, not just Shifeng but even Zero Wing and all powers affiliated with Zero Wing were going to suffer. Everybody knew how much the Divine Seal Saint loved his youngest son. Simply because an upper-ranking hegemonic power had treated Dira poorly, the Divine Seal Saint had led his Divine Seal Legion to erase the upper-ranking hegemonic power's existence, shocking the entire Starlight Realm. What Shifeng just did was infinitely worse than what the upper-ranking hegemonic power did, so it didn't take a genius to figure out how the Divine Seal Saint would react. Kid, do you know what you just did? Iron Crocodile bellowed at Shifeng, his expression looking a little crazed when he saw Dira getting killed. Young Master Dira is the Divine Seal Saint's favorite son, yet, not only did you dare to kill him, but you even did so with a legendary weapon. Do you have any idea what consequences your actions will bring? As Dira's bodyguard, Iron Crocodile knew better than anyone else present just what kind of personality the Divine Seal Saint possessed. It was also why he was the most horrified by Shifeng's actions out of everyone present. It should be known that Shifeng didn't just kill Dira. Instead, he had killed Dira using a legendary weapon. All legendary weapons came with the soul annihilation effect, which Tier 4 immortal souls had little resistance to. Even in the best-case scenario, Dira would sustain heavy damage to his soul after getting killed by Shifeng. However, it was also entirely possible his soul would get destroyed completely. If a player had their soul annihilated, it would be incredibly difficult for them to enter God's domain again. In the greater world, being unable to enter God's domain was no different than being a cripple. A person unable to enter God's domain would be incapable of achieving a higher order of life and gaining a longer lifespan. This would not change even if this person had full access to the massive resources of a conglomerate. Meanwhile, Iron Crocodile's words caused everyone present to shudder involuntarily. Everyone could clearly feel Iron Crocodile's fear and madness, so they understood that Shifeng had truly gotten himself into big trouble this time. After this incident, nobody could save Shifeng anymore. In fact, many people might have gotten implicated because of him. Trecht, how about we take action together? After taking a deep breath, Meteor drew his long sword and turned to look at Trecht. Iron Crocodile's fear isn't an act. We have most likely been dragged into a huge problem, and our only hope of surviving this ordeal is to capture Black Flame. They had watched Dira getting killed before their very eyes. With the Divine Seal Saint's temper, he was almost certain to deal with them together with Black Flame. If they wanted to avoid the Divine Seal Saint's wrath, their only option was to capture Black Flame and hand him over to the Divine Seal Saint. I want to, but, looking at the Winter of Eternal Night in Shifeng's hand, Trecht shrugged and said, even if all of us here work together, we still won't be his match. I'm sure Iron Crocodile is also aware of this. Trecht naturally understood Meteor's concerns. However, compared to Meteor, Utrecht had a better understanding of what it meant to own a legendary weapon in the miniature ancient world. Even Tier 5 players like Iron Crocodile would have difficulty holding Shifeng back, let alone Tier 4 players like themselves. Upon hearing Trecht's words, the various hegemonic powers executives, who had been thinking of attacking Shifeng together, promptly snapped out of their dazes and looked at Shifeng's Winter of Eternal Night fearfully. They had been so horrified by Shifeng's act of killing Dira that they had nearly forgotten Shifeng wielded a legendary weapon. With a legendary weapon in hand, even if Shifeng wasn't a Tier 5 player, he was still superior to Tier 5 players. Apart from the 3 Beast Warriors, everyone else in this room was unlikely to last more than one hit against Shifeng. It was also because of this that Iron Crocodile and the other Beast Warriors did not take action against Shifeng, choosing to only glare at him angrily. Otherwise, with how crazed the 3 of them were right now, they would have long since ripped Shifeng into shreds. In the meantime, Shifeng behaved as if he didn't hear Iron Crocodile's angry bellowing as he slowly walked up to the shattered space. Then, under everyone's gaze, he collected the 2 items Dira dropped and put them into his bag. How dare he? Thousand Scars gaped in shock at this scene. To not only kill Dira but also take the items he dropped. Thousand Scars couldn't even imagine how much courage Shifeng possessed to do such a thing. Was Shifeng trying to see how much he could provoke the Paimon conglomerate? This scene similarly stupefied everyone else in the room. Yet, there was nothing they could do but watch as Shifeng did this. Or, more specifically, they wouldn't accomplish anything even if they tried to stop him. If they took action against Shifeng, they would simply be met with the same fate as Dira. At this point, even if most of the people present didn't know about the hidden effects of legendary weapons, they still knew that Shifeng's previous attack was already capable of heavily damaging Tier 4 immortal souls. Meanwhile, if a player's soul was heavily damaged, they would be prohibited from logging into the game anywhere from a few days to half a month. Moreover, they would be put in a weakened state even after they could log back into the game again. The world passage was set to open soon. If they suddenly lost the ability to log into God's domain for half a month, They might as well kiss the world passage's opening benefits goodbye. Meanwhile, after collecting the 2 dropped items, Shifeng turned around to look at Midsummer, Wu Xiaoxiao, and Jun Luoshuo, saying, "Let's go." The 3 girls remained in a daze even until now, so they only instinctively nodded to Shifeng's words before following Shifeng out of the room. When Shifeng's group of 4 walked out of the room, whether it was the people in the room or the Shadowguard Legion members outside the room, they all did nothing but watch as the 4 left the Thunder restaurant. From beginning to end, nobody dared to attack Shifeng's group. "What should we do now, Krak?" the Tier 5 Grand Wizard asked Iron Crocodile after seeing Shifeng leaving. "What else can we do?" With a gloomy expression, Iron Crocodile said, "All we can do now is check on the young master's situation and wait for Lord Divine Seal's arrangement." The Grand Wizard and brilliant cleric Saint involuntarily shuddered when they heard the mention of the Divine Seal Saint. Meanwhile, shortly after Shifeng's group left the Thunder restaurant, news of Shifeng killing Dira quickly spread across the entire miniature ancient world, greatly shocking the various powers. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3291, Chapter 365, Miniature Ancient World Shaken. Chapter 3291, Chapter 365, Miniature Ancient World Shaken. Chapter 365, Miniature Ancient World Shaken. Thunder Fortress, Wind Bell Hotel. The Wind Bell Hotel was one of the few advanced hotels in the Thunder Fortress. Even though the hotel charged an exorbitant accommodation fee of 10 units of 7 luminaries crystal per day for its cheapest room, its rooms were still highly coveted by the various hegemonic powers. This was because it could not only allow players to recover from the corrosion of hostile energies, but it could also temporarily improve players' physique. More specifically, players could gain a 5% increase in their physique for up to 48 hours if they rested in the hotel for 8 hours. Currently, though, the Wind Bell Hotel was surrounded by over 100 Tier 4 experts. Moreover, when the various hegemonic powers' Tier 4 titled experts saw these players' guild emblem, none dared to force their way into the hotel. Instead, they chose to look for other hotels to stay at. Lord Saint 9, I really have to thank you for your reminder on the flying ship. Otherwise, I would have most certainly died a tragic death, Calgaran said, shuddering a little when he recalled the news his subordinates had just sent him. I can't believe Black Flame would dare to kill even that Dira. He truly is insane. Any executive member of the Starlight Realm's various hegemonic powers and corporations would know about Dira. He was an existence even the helmsman of corporations greatly feared. Yet, now, Black Flame had slain Dira. Once this news spread across the Starlight Realm, it would definitely shake the entire realm. Saint 9, who currently sat cross-legged in the middle of the lounge, also couldn't help but be taken aback when he finished reading the message Calgaran shared with him. Although I've long guessed that Black Flame isn't some small-time character, I didn't think he had kept so much hidden. A legendary weapon. With this thing in hand, I doubt anybody in the miniature ancient world can survive more than one attack from him. Meanwhile, in another advanced hotel in the Thunder Fortress, Dira died. Franz fell into a daze when he read the message he had just received. Is Black Flame insane? Even the Starlight Realm's various upper-ranking hegemonic powers would have to treat Dira like he was their ancestor. After all, even disrespecting Dira was enough to lead to the elimination of their entire organization from God's domain, let alone harming Dira. As for the act of killing Dira, this was something nobody in the Starlight Realm dared to think about. It seems an unprecedented storm is going to sweep across this miniature world soon, Favre said, sighing when she finished reading the report. All of a sudden, she wasn't sure whether her niece Maria had a good eye for people or not anymore. Not only did Black Flame become the ancient River Kingdom's first paragon, but he even possessed a legendary weapon. With such strength, Black Flame would be invincible in the miniature ancient world. Originally, Black Flame could have accomplished great things in the miniature ancient world. Under his lead, Zero Wing could also develop its abyssal star primordial city into the miniature ancient world's #1 city. Zero Wing might even be able to secure itself a position in the Thunder Fortress, gaining hold of a portion of the wealth that would eventually come through the world passage. Now, though, All that had become nothing more than a dream. Even the miniature ancient world in its entirety was incapable of withstanding the divine seal saint's wrath, let alone an individual like Black Flame. Meanwhile, after the miniature ancient world's various powers received news of Dira's death, apart from feeling shocked, they also felt delighted. I have to admit that Black Flame is indeed strong. If he can kill even Dira, he is undoubtedly the strongest player in the current miniature ancient world. Originally, I thought Zero Wing would make a comeback in the World Passage's opening this time. Now, though, Zero Wing is finished. The moment the World Passage opens will also be the moment of Black Flame's and Zero Wing's elimination. There was only a limited amount of reward points to go around during the World Passage's opening. Originally, Zero Wing could have relied on Black Flame's fame and strength to secure a share of the World Passage's opening benefits. So, Black Flame's and Zero Wing's elimination would naturally be good news for the various powers. Brother Black Flame, now that you've killed Dira, the Divine Seal Saint definitely won't rest until you're gone, Midsummer worriedly said as she looked at Chiffon. The Paimon conglomerate might not have much strength in the current miniature ancient world, but once the World Passage opens, this world will no longer be safe. Before access to a god's domain or miniature world became open, it would be subjected to the main god system's protection. Under the system's protection, even apex powers would have difficulty laying their hands on it. However, it was a different story once a god's domains or miniature world's world passage opened. While foreign players entering through the world passage would be subjected to the suppression of the world's power, it still wasn't a difficult task for a conglomerate to destroy an entire god's domain, let alone a miniature world. Jun Luosha also nodded in agreement with Midsummer's words. She felt that Chiffon was truly crazy. She had even started to regret accepting Wu Xiaoxiao's invitation. This is indeed going to be a problem. Chiffon did not refute Midsummer's concerns. Instead, he calmly said, but so long as we are talking about this miniature world, even after the world passage opens, the Paimon conglomerate won't have an easy time targeting me or Zero Wing. The world passage wouldn't become fully opened all at once. Instead, it was a gradual process. In a certain sense, it could be considered a protection mechanism for the affected world's players, giving them time to adapt to the greater god's domain. Although the opening of the miniature ancient world's world passage would immediately allow players from other worlds to enter, only Tier 4 players could enter the miniature ancient world at the beginning. Only after some time had passed would Tier 5 and Tier 6 players be allowed to enter directly. Hence, so long as Chiffon had enough god crystals to temporarily upgrade the Winter of Eternal Night to the legendary rank, he had no reason to fear Tier 4 players. Any number of Tier 4 players the Paimon conglomerate sent at him would merely be cannon fodder. This was also why he dared to kill Dira. However, a larger part of why Chiffon had chosen to kill Dira was because of his contract with the Dragon Princess. So long as he could collect 300 god crystals to help the Dragon Princess recover her strength, he would not have to fear any power in the miniature ancient world. After all, the Dragon Princess's strength was no joke. After Chiffon finished speaking, the group of 4 also arrived at Zero Wing's gathering point in the Thunder Fortress. The Blood Rabbit Hotel. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 3292, Chapter 366, Astonishing Zero Wing. Chapter 3292, Chapter 366, Astonishing Zero Wing. Chapter 366, Astonishing Zero Wing. Thunder Fortress, Blood Rabbit Hotel. The Blood Rabbit Hotel was a basic hotel located on the edge of the Thunder Fortress. Its location in the Thunder Fortress was far from ideal. Not only was it far from the port, but it was also a considerable distance from the Adventurers Association. As a result, not even independent players would choose to rest here. The Blood Rabbit Hotel's only advantages over other hotels were its price and size. It only cost 5 magic crystals a day to rent a room in the hotel. The hotel was also on the larger side of basic hotels, with well over 1,000 rooms. Currently, many players were crowded outside the 6-story-tall Blood Rabbit Hotel. Every one of these players wore 6-winged emblems on their chests. Although over 90% of these players were Tier 3 players, The number of Tier 4 players among them was no fewer than the Tier 4 players the various hegemonic powers possessed. When Shifeng's group of 4 stepped into the Blood Rabbit Hotel's lobby, even Shifeng, who had not returned to the miniature ancient world for some time, couldn't help but be surprised by what he saw. At this time, Su Qianliu and the other executives of Zero Wing were already gathered in the lobby. However, compared to before Shifeng left the miniature ancient world, Zero Wing now had many more executive members. Moreover, apart from Su Qianliu, Firecloud, Happy Snow, and Rampant Blade, everyone else had also reached Tier 4. Among the new executives were Mysterious Moon's Zhua Yalin, Lin Yaoyu, and Crimson Seal. There were also the Star Alliance's Galaxy Past and the Purple Light trading firms Echoing Judgment, Wordless Ember, and Slumbering Quicksand. When Shifeng was away from the miniature ancient world, Mysterious Moon, the Star Alliance, and the Purple Light trading firm had all chosen to merge into Zero Wing. Meanwhile, because of the 2 first-rate guilds and the Purple Light trading firm's mix, Zero Wing became the 7th great power among the miniature ancient world's various native powers. Incredible! So, this is Zero Wing? Midsummer was taken aback when she saw Zero Wing's executives. Particularly, Echoing Judgment, Wordless Ember, Slumbering Quicksand, Galaxy Past, Crimson Seal, and Su Qianliu. She could feel significant pressure coming from these 6 people. Although she had more or less learned about Zero Wing through Shifeng and Wu Xiaoxiao, she didn't think Zero Wing would be strong to such an extent. The control these 6 people had over mana was simply unbelievable. Even though none of these 6 people had entered the 100 refinement building, they had already developed their mana bodies to a 120% completion rate. Moreover, she could feel the presence of titled experts coming from Wordless Ember and Slumbering Quicksand. It should be known that they were currently in an isolated miniature world. Without the assistance of the Greater God's domain's resources and environment, even paragons like Saint Nine would be fortunate to reach the 4th floor standard. Normally, even 3rd floor experts were incredibly rare in isolated God's domains and miniature worlds. Moreover, most of these 3rd floor experts would be Tier 6 players in their respective worlds. Meanwhile, after entering the Greater God's domain, these 3rd floor experts would quickly grow to the 4th floor standard, with some even becoming titled experts. Although many of the Starlight Realm's hegemonic powers had invested in the miniature ancient world, the assistance these powers could provide to the miniature ancient world's natives was extremely limited. It was nowhere near the assistance players could obtain in the Greater God's domain. If Su Qianliu and the others were to enter the Greater God's domain, their future would be limitless. As expected of the guild chosen by Vice President Xia. With Zero Wing's current strength, it can already compete with the various hegemonic powers. Jun Luosha and Wu Xiaoxiao were similarly surprised when they saw Su Qianliu and the others. Unlike Midsummer, Jun Luosha and Wu Xiaoxiao were native to the miniature ancient world. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that they had watched Zero Wing grow from nothing to its current state in the miniature ancient world. However, compared to the information they learned through the Green God Corporation's reports, the current strength of Zero Wing's executives was like night and day. The rumors about Zero Wing having only Black Flame to support it couldn't be any further from the truth. At the very least, when it came to 4th floor experts, the number Zero Wing had was hardly any inferior to the number the various hegemonic powers had committed to the miniature ancient world. Out of Shifeng's group of 4, only Shifeng knew that it was normal for Su Qianliu and the others to have their current strength. After all, mana was the foundation of everything in God's domain, and the Tower of Transcendence, 1, improved all aspects of mana. Hence, training in the Tower of Transcendence yielded extraordinary results. On top of that, Su Qianliu and the others also had the assistance of the Holy Annihilation mana technique and the Hypersensitivity potion. These were all resources that even the Greater God's domain's various hegemonic powers did not possess. What do you think, guild leader? Su Qianliu asked when she saw Shifeng walking over, a hint of pride in her voice. Zero Wing is very strong now, right? Even without including the Azura Mercenary Alliance's Tier 4 experts, Zero Wing already had 155 Tier 4 experts. This was more than what most hegemonic powers in the miniature ancient world possessed. If they factored in the use of magic tactical vehicles, Zero Wing could have even more Tier 4 combatants. In a frontal confrontation, Su Qianliu could confidently say that Zero Wing would not lose to any hegemonic power in the miniature ancient world. Though, after boasting Zero Wing's achievements to Shifeng, Su Qianliu couldn't help but look at Wu Xiaoxiao and Zhun Luosha in surprise. Or, more specifically, she was taken aback by the Zero Wing emblem they wore. She didn't think that Jinhai City's famous genius Wu Xiaoxiao would actually join Zero Wing, much less Zhun Luosha, the Green God Corporation's #1 genius. This was definitely big news. After all, Zhun Luosha was highly coveted by even the various hegemonic powers. The guild has indeed grown a lot stronger while I was away, Shifeng said, nodding. The current Zero Wing might not be a match for the Greater God's Domain's various hegemonic powers, but it was undoubtedly stronger than the detached forces the various hegemonic powers had sent to the miniature ancient world. We've already heard about the matter regarding Dira, guild leader, Su Qianliu said. We'll definitely have to teach the Paimon conglomerate a good lesson once the world passage opens. Commander Laura has also said that her party will come to our aid as soon as possible. We'll make sure the Paimon conglomerate's entry into the world passage will be a one-way trip. Other powers might be able to tolerate their guild leaders signing a slave contract, but that was not something Zero Wing could tolerate. Had she been at the banquet, she would have definitely taught Dira a lesson without hesitation. If Commander Laura's party can come, that is indeed good news. Shifeng was surprised. Laura Crader and her companions were very mysterious in their actions. Ever since they arrived in the miniature ancient world, they would hardly ever show themselves. Yet, every member of their party was incredibly strong, much stronger than even the likes of Wordless Ember and Slumbering Quicksand. But even with their help, we still need a little something else to go up against the Paimon conglomerate. Have you prepared the materials I asked you to gather? After returning to the miniature ancient world, Shifeng immediately contacted Su Qianliu and asked her to prepare the materials needed for the primordial divine dragon summoning. Although these materials were scarce in the miniature ancient world, preparing 1 or 2 sets should still be possible. And because the primordial divine dragon summoning's magic array scrolls had a 100% production success rate, every set of material collected would equal 1 complete set of magic array scrolls. Meanwhile, a Tier 5 primordial divine dragon's phantom was a weapon of mass destruction. It could be used to great effect even in a war between kingdoms in the Greater God's Domain, let alone the miniature ancient world. I didn't have much preparation time, and you asked for a large variety of epic materials, so I only managed to collect 4 sets thus far. I'm going to need more time if you want more sets, Su Qianliu said in embarrassment as she took out a bag full of materials. 4 sets. Shifeng couldn't help but laugh. With this many, we can definitely make the Paimon conglomerate suffer. Meanwhile, after Shifeng was done allocating responsibilities in Zero Wing, he left for a room in the Blood Rabbit Hotel to start producing the scrolls for the primordial divine dragon summoning. Are these the items Dira dropped? Just as Shifeng was about to retrieve the material bag, he paused when he noticed 2 foreign items in his spatial bag. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,